Welcome back to the closing table. Today, I am thrilled to host a true expert in the world of business transitions and value maximization. Our guest is Seth Deutsch, the managing partner at Samson Partners Group, where he helps business owners navigate the complex journey of selling their companies. Seth's philosophy is rooted in a deep understanding of the founder's journey. He believes that for business owners, selling a company isn't just the transaction. It's the culmination of a life's work. He's dedicated to ensuring founders don't just get a good deal, but the right deal. Excited to learn about your journey and all of the hats you wear and have worn to deliver immense value to your clients, including those as an author and songwriter. Welcome to the show, Seth.
Thank you for having me. And, you do a much better job of talking about us than I do, but I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Well, thank you for taking the time. Genuinely am excited to, just listen to your story, hear where it all started, and ultimately all the way through how you got to where you're at today.
Yeah. So, you want me to go in the way back machine real quick, or where do you want to begin?
Sure. Context is always critical, right? So yeah, give us a little backstory.
My journey begins where where I'm today as a coach, and is how I still think of myself. It's in my DNA. I was actually this weekend with 4 of my teammates from Rice University, where I played basketball and coached basketball for 3 years. And it's funny how some roles just never change, and decided to get away from the game and go into the world of business about 15 years ago. I'll skip through all the early parts, but I got into the world of professional services. I went to work for a company called AECOM, publicly traded, one of the first ever buy and builds in the world of architecture, engineering, and construction management, environmental services. I went into the firm after they had an IPO to help re-engineer their go-to-market motion. And then they wanted me to start basically take over an industrial business that was there. And so we started with about a $25 million P&L. And about 6 years later, my team and I had grown that to about $2 billion in revenue with 1,000 employees, 15 service lines in 80 countries. That team that I did that with is still with me today, both at Samson. And then one of the key leaders there is the CEO of a family-owned construction business that we're taking through a transformation where I'm on the board. And I went from there to then run another business at AECOM, which was sold to private equity. And then I led as a CEO and a chairman a number of buy and builds in professional services and blue collar services. The last one was a founder-led finance and accounting business that I stepped in and took the business from $1 million to $30 million in EBIT over 2.5 years and recapitalized it for a 6.5 times cash on cash return. And then after that, I started Samson. I realized that, kind of when I was 30, I went back to business school. And one of my classmates was the first ever to suggest to me that I should think about being a CEO. It's not anything I had ever conceived of. And I'm like, hey, that sounds like a good goal. Why not? Let me go do that. I did it. And I did it a few times. And I learned a lot. And I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a lot. And I also realized that the same way the reason I made a pivot into business, once I'd gone into the world of business, and I originally started both in sales, corporate development, some M&A, and I was like, I've got the gift of gab. I can lead. I can convince clients to do stuff. I'm going to be like a head of sales or a chief commercial officer. But about 6 years into that journey, I realized that intellectually doing that one thing wasn't satisfying my intellectual capacity and my intellectual needs. And so when Kevin suggested that, I'm like, okay, I set a goal and I did it. And when I came out of that, I then realized my emotional needs, and a lot of them, you can't really necessarily expect your emotional needs to be met by work, but that as a person was really important to me. I realized that I needed to be emotionally connected to my work. I put so much into it, and me and my DNA being a teacher and a coach, that just making money wasn't satisfying either. And so I decided to start Samson with my co-founder, Jordan, who I met at AECOM, has been with me for 15 years. And we said, let's go take all of this knowledge that we have and help founders in a different way. So I guess technically I'm still a CEO, but I don't call myself that. It's not on my LinkedIn profile or my business card. I'm a founder and I'm a managing partner. And we just love supporting others and and it's the same way that I was as a coach. My job is to help you get to where you want to go. My help is to maximize your potential. And that's not something that we define for you. That's something that you have to define for yourself. But the journey that you want to take is one where you need support and guidance by others who have been down that path. And a big part of what we bring are all the mistakes that we made. So you don't have, anyway, that's the journey.
I love it. There's a lot to unpack there, but all, kind of makes sense with that progression. It's clearly in your DNA to be
I guess it makes sense because, I can tell the story however I want, but it's not like I wouldn't say to someone, hey, go down this, follow my path. Like, please don't. But it is what it is.
So in your opinion, then, what was the main driver or catalyst that led you to found this business? Did you see a void in the marketplace or a need for this type of service?
I'd be lying if I told you those things. I could sit here and tell you this was all by design and here's stuff. Didn't happen that way. When I sold our HVAC company and was just on a break, Samson already existed. People had been asking me to go on boards. And so that was the beginning. So I'm like, yeah, I want to help. And so I went on some boards, finance and accounting firm. I originally went on their board, then went in-house. That's how this began. It was just people asking me for my help. And then the demand that was coming in outstripped my capacity to serve it. And so the first person I tapped on the shoulder was Jordan. Like, hey, come on, come with me. She's like, okay. And then it started to spread to people like Adam Coffey, who did the forward for my book. And a lot of people know Adam, Gary Bauman, who's on the board who's with me at AECOM, somehow was on my team there, which is ridiculous. And he's on the board of the largest publicly traded architecture, engineering, construction company in Canada. He's on our team. Ed Satina, who I met at AECOM, I brought him in as a chairman of one of our companies. I brought Adam in as the chairman of another of our companies. And it's just fascinating to me. Anyway, and Ed was like the CEO of Tishman, and ran global, and now we make him available to founder-led businesses, which is awesome, right? So like this talent that we have, and the fact that they like hanging out with me and doing this type of work, and so that's how it was born. And it took me a while because there was no design. Right. I knew this need was there because I'd sat across from so many founders when I was on the private equity side, acquiring their businesses. And I saw, especially smaller businesses, which let's just say under 20 million, under 10 million of revenue, whatever, the advice, or I should say the lack of advice that they would get in preparing their business for a transaction was appalling. And I found like having to sit there and either tell them why we couldn't buy the company or why the deal value or the deal structure was going to look like something that was not what they had expected. And they should have been told. The people that were representing them should have informed them. And I felt compelled to do something about this, but find a way to do it that would scale. And I don't have a brand and I've never marketed or any of this. Like the businesses I ran, either, as a division of a publicly traded company, marketing was handled. Everyone knew who we were. And more in the business to business space, like finance and accounting and some of the blue collar stuff, like, yeah, you got a website and whatever, but you're not really marketing. Doing this type of thing, I'm doing a bunch of things I've never done before, but I decided Adam Coffey really encouraged me to initially write a book. I'd started to teach classes that I designed for founders who were thinking about preparing for private equity or who were thinking about doing M&A themselves without private equity, then later taking their firms to market. So I'd started to teach classes on these things. And so the Owner's Manual, which is the book that we just put out, was actually based on a class that I had been teaching. And so I decided to put it into a book. And then we have 25 contributors in there. All those folks are my friends. I didn't just want this from my perspective. I want it from theirs. And then we also created, an assessment form that's on the website, and all the tools that we use when we're working with clients are available for free on our website. And I also looked at what like Gino Wickman did. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, please, trying to like say that we're going to have anywhere near the type of reach or success. I'm just saying from an exemplar perspective, right? I looked at what Gino did with traction and EOS. And what I saw so I think about our first few years here as like paid R&D and just us being called to help. And I really view this as a calling to help people. But now I'm just coaching in a different way from decades of experience doing this. And so what I wanted to do is to create a way to get our knowledge to every single founder that deserves to know these things, right? And so whether or not they ever call us or engage us, and the text I just got is fucking hilarious. I'm so sorry, folks. You get what you get. And so between the book and the assessment and the tools on the website, my hope is that we have done a service to all founders and that it's possible that they could read the book, take 10 minutes, fill out the assessment, download our tools, and they might be able to self-implement this stuff without ever needing our help. That is like a dream. That is an honest dream of mine. I don't know if I did a good enough job to do that, but that's my hope. And so that's me taking a break, people asking me to help, me getting burned. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to set up a company. Then it's me helping. And then over time, I think just realizing that I had reached a point in my life where I could actually, hopefully make the type of living that I need to make doing what I want to do versus what someone suggests that I do or trying to fit into someone's box. Now here I sound like every other founder in the world. And the other thing that I realized, because I have a mental health condition, it's technically a disability and I'm very blessed and fortunate. Most people that have what I have aren't able to function very well in life. I have a condition called complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is caused by severe childhood trauma. And what I also came to realize is that being employed by someone makes me feel trapped and kept. And I was trapped and kept for part of my childhood. And I never connected the dots on how I felt emotionally and physically when in other people's employ. And that is also to say that you don't have to have CPTSD to feel trapped or kept by an employer. Right. So in any case, my situation's a little bit different. And I came to that realization in June of this year. It is at that point in time, I also conceived of the book and decided to codify our business system and to produce this daffodil and to produce this material and to go fully into this. I say to people, the book has been out like 2 weeks. We're still not doing any marketing yet, other than me playing around on LinkedIn, making funny dog videos. You know, I feel so blessed and fortunate to be alive, to be present, to be in my life, to have spent the last 2.5 years while messing around with the company, working on my neurological rewiring, to be in that period, to be able to help so many people. And now with a dream of helping more people, whether that's through our teaching, through our classes, through our speaking, by working directly with us, however we can help, we want to help. That's so there's design, but over time, it's just, we experimented with the market. We've experimented with our business model. And I say to the team, we are now at day one.
So Seth, let me ask you a question, kind of break it down for the viewers. Give me an example of a typical, I don't want to call it a problem, but could be a hurdle, an obstacle, whether it be, like you mentioned, just poor guidance.
Yeah, I'll give
and then ultimately paint it to where you resolve that. And
yeah,
what those,
I'll give you some real specifics. And these are things that we see happen, all the time. And this is where, this is why actually a lot of, I use the example of Gino Wickman, right? And Traction EOS. We work with a lot of companies that are implementing EOS or scaling up or Rockefeller habits, or they've been coached, right? And the business has been scaling, the founders, let's say perhaps off his or her tools. But what happens is when you're just scaling for scaling's sake, not with an endpoint, not with this terminal endpoint in mind. What I mean by that is this new desire to either sell the business, take on outside investment, be a platform for private equity, be a tuck-in, whatever it might be, whatever's driving this decision. A lot of founders at some point in time wake up and they're like, hey, I've done this. Now I'm ready to do the next thing. And let's say that is sell the business and retire on the day you sell it, right? Well, as you're building that business, you're not necessarily looking at it through the investor's lens. You're maximizing the business based off of your potential, what's feeding you and your family, what's sustaining your business. And an investor might take a different way and maximizing it for tax purposes, et cetera, right? And so what we teach founders to do, and then I'll go into the specifics, is to detach themselves emotionally from the business and move into, I want them to occupy the mind of an outside investor as opposed to an owner operator, and look at the business the same way that you might look at a piece of real estate and say, wherever you live, the per square foot range for a single family home in that market might be 300 to 500 a square foot. We know the things that make up the delta there: location, foundation, scaping, age of your roof, age of your appliances, paint, how many bathrooms do you have? How old are the bathrooms, the plumbing, the fixtures, all the stuff. And you've got a decision to make. And you can go on Zillow and Redfin. And if you can be emotionally honest. And so I say, don't think about selling your own house. Think about buying a piece of a real estate investment, buying a single family home to rent it out. Right. You are now in the seat of the investor, and the person that owns it might be like, I want $500 because that's the top of the market. And you might come in and look at it, but look, I've done my assessment of the property and the roof is 15 years old and the HVAC is 10 years old and the kitchen appliances haven't been changed in 20 years and you're not in the right school district and blah, blah, blah. Here's an offer for 300. Now, if you're the owner, right, and you want the 500, and the offers are coming in at 300, guess what? That's what the market has spoken. Now you have a choice. Sell it as is, take some time and money, and remodel the house, and then sell it. Business is the same thing. Every business in the United States and globally has a known trade range, known value range. And so oftentimes we will come in and see two very specific things as examples. Number one, the founder at the time of sale wants to retire. And guess what? He or she has not groomed anyone to take over the business. And so when a buyer looks at that, they'll say, well, gee whiz, this has a lot of what we call key man dependency. So much of the business runs through you. You're still overseeing every function here. You haven't put in a president or a successor. And they might say, well, Jimmy over here, he's been with me for 10 years. He knows everything. All right. Well, here's what I want you to do. If this is what you're desiring, right? 2 years before the transaction, promote Jimmy. Give Jimmy some equity. Make Jimmy the CEO. Move yourself to chairman. Groom him for a year and then get your ass out of there for the second year and prove to the investors that the business has survived and thrived and gone on without you in the seat. That's an example. Here's another thing that we see a lot. I see this in construction quite a bit, where I run a restoration company. And one of my buddies that I went to high school with has become a big real estate developer. And guess what? He gives me all his work. For me, it's fucking awesome, right? Like my buddy, he could give this to anyone. He's giving it to me, doing $12 million a year in revenue. I'm making 14% EBITDA margin, 30% gross margin. Cash flow is strong. He always pays me on time. It's never late. He's my buddy, right? And of that 12 million in revenue, that makes up 60% of my revenue. One client I have a personal high school relationship with makes up 60% of my revenue. And I decide I want to sell the business. Here's what the investor says. You got high client concentration. That's based on a personal relationship. What if you go away? What if you get hit by a bus? What if he gets hit by a bus, right? So what do we say to this founder if they come across us 2 years before, as soon as they have this thought, I might want to sell this business. That's when I want people, if you don't call me, just read the book. What do you need to do? You need to take that client concentration down. How do you need to do this? You need to get proactive and go recruit, go win additional work, right? I'm not saying shrink the business. I'm saying grow the business but don't grow more with him. Grow more with other clients that are going to treat you well, pay you well, all these things. Take that client concentration risk down, because the only thing that outside investors are looking at when they look at a business, when they evaluate a business, is the predictability of future cash flow. So we ask ourselves, what are the things that drive more or less predictability? The less client concentration we have means that if we lose a client, guess what? That client maybe made up 5% of our revenue. That means that we still have 95% revenue stability. And if we have a good sales and marketing function, then we can go win another client. But if one client, for whatever reason, goes away and it makes up 60% of the business, oh boy, that's hard to recover from. Especially remember that outside investors are typically also putting debt on this. So they've got debt that they've got to repay. So I just give you an example of two things. We talk about there are kind of 7 attributes. Same way I talk about a house. There are 7 attributes of a business. We detail all this in the book. People have told me the book's pretty easy to understand. I hope that's the case. But there are 2 really, really good examples of things that we see. And here's the thing, folks. These are all addressable if you get proactive. And I'm not saying you need to address these things if you are just running the business to run it. If you are running the business to own it forever. If you are thinking about transitioning the business to your son or daughter or niece or nephew, or if you are thinking about selling it to your employees. However, I would also say this, that anything can happen. And these things that we talk about, to me, make good sense to do anyway, because things happen in life. You could get disabled. And if so much of the business runs through you, think about the employees and their families that are counting upon this as a going concern. And so addressing some of these things that don't feel like risks, if we're honest, we tell people we live in the world of, try to get our clients to live in the world of reality, that addressing some of these things just creates strength. We talk about making businesses anti-fragile. We talk about making businesses resilient to change. And a lot of things in business and in life, we don't have control over. Control is a bit of an illusion. So, looking at these things, whether or not you ever decide to sell the business, I think it's a healthy exercise. But as soon as you have that thought, we want you to put yourself in the shoes of the outside investor, right? Hey, and if you can't do that yourself because of your emotional attachment, what we say is have your spouse do it, have your buddy do it, have your business partner do it. Call us, we'll help you. Well, I'm not trying to promote calling us, not that we don't want more clients, but I'm trying to be honest and just say, we want to help people, whether or not you reach out to us or not. We talk to your wealth manager or your estate planner, right? Find someone that you can trust that can help you take this view and this perspective. And whether you decide to do anything with that knowledge or not, that's okay. But if you are thinking about at some point in time selling the business, whether you do or not, what I don't want to have happen to you is that you get surprised when the offers come in. Well, here's where you will really get surprised is someone that wants to list the business will tell you what you want to hear to get the listing. And an investor might also tell you what you want to hear to get you under an exclusive letter of intent. And then they show up with what we call the recut. And now you have gone through a process. You've gone into exclusivity. By the way, I want to remind everyone, only 1 of 3 letters of intent closes statistically across all businesses in the United States, right? And so here you are, you've shopped the business, 300 people have the book, 10 came in and looked at it, you took one offer, you went under exclusivity, and then they recut you. And they already knew they were going to recut you, but they told you what you wanted to hear to get you under exclusivity. And then you're like, well, fuck, I'm this far into it. And if I cancel this, even if I just decide to cancel it because I don't want to do a deal, guess what? People, like everything else in life, in the absence of information, they will make up their own narrative. And so what can happen is that people think that there was something wrong with the business, even if they're beautiful and perfect, but you just decided emotionally you didn't want to do a transaction. People will just think that something is wrong, and then you'll kind of be dead in the water for a few years. I don't want this to happen to as many people as this happens to. And so we have made quite an effort in our own way, and we're not done. making these efforts to provide this type of information to the market. These are things that you can get ahead of.
Seth, you're making my job today extremely easy. All I had to do was show up with my ears. But everything you're saying, it's interesting because me personally, having been in the real estate industry for the past 10 years, the amount of overlap between, a business and, let's call it a residential home, conceptually, there is a lot of overlap. And, to what you just said about the perception and cutting the deal, it's the same thing with the house, going on market, days on market, then canceling the listing.
People wonder what's wrong.
There's got to,
right? It's like, it went under contract and then it didn't close. All people think is something must be wrong with the house.
Correct. So to your point, pricing it right out the gate and having clear-cut expectations as far as what you can ultimately yield for those expectations, is very important. And then back to your previous comments about, a high concentration of one client. It's like a portfolio, a financial portfolio of stocks and commodities, whatever the case may be, to diversify. The importance of diversifying and not having just, a highly concentrated one stock or, one holding versus, a bunch that if one does fall off,
for whatever reason. And with the stock market,
mitigates risk.
Well, you've got no control of this, right? Like you're going up, right? You're a passive shareholder, just like everyone else. And listen, by the way, all businesses go through spikes in concentration as they're growing, right? You're growing the business, you get a big new client, all of a sudden, right? Oh shit, I just had a big spike. Actually, I do a podcast called Diners and Deals. Our episode with John Barrett, he talks about this, right? Yeah, listen, that's a great thing, right? Then you got to diversify again, right? You got to diversify again. The thing is, when you go to market, and this is not necessarily a bad thing for you as a business owner, right? But you still want to try to diversify anyway. The thing is, when you go, don't go to market if you can control it with uber high concentration. Now, I'll also just say, I'm giving that to you generally. There are certain industries that just lend themselves to more concentration than others. Like if you're a contractor for power lines in the utility space, there are only so many utilities. If you're doing cell phone tower construction, there are only so many cell phone carriers. So there are some exceptions to this. I don't want to just, make people think I'm not the brightest bulb in the bunch, but there are some exceptions. But as a general rule of thumb, you really need to think about these things.
Seth, I couldn't agree more. And thank you for, this wealth of knowledge around this. I hope, the viewers at least grabbed a couple nuggets of information that they can put into practice from this. In closing, I'd like you to plug all the different, outlets and tools that you may have for them, or, if they can, where and how they can find you to learn more and potentially use your services.
Of course. Got to plug it's hard. Okay. So I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to do it. I'm doing it, everybody. I'm doing it. Let me answer. Great question, Adam. Thank you for allowing me to do that. So you can buy the book on Amazon, The Owner's Manual, Why, When, and How to Sell Your Business to Private Equity. You can also go on our website, www.samsonpartnersgroup.com. On the website, you'll see a bunch of information, but if you go to the resources page, there's an assessment there. There are toolkits there. There are cheat sheets that we have at the back of the book. You can also download all of those, and then you can contact us through the website. You can also just find me on LinkedIn and feel free to send me a DM. I'll put anyone in touch with our team to get us scheduled to talk about what you're trying to achieve. We're happy to talk to any founder about this, whether you work with us or not. We're happy to help you think through this. And then, we do a lot of work in the legal industry. We were one of the first three groups in the United States years ago to bring private equity into the legal industry. And we're putting out a white paper on that on January 5th, about an 80-page white paper specifically on preparing personal injury law firms for investment from outside investors. But we've worked a lot across those sectors, but we tend to work on things that we've done as operators. And so we spend a lot of time in architecture, engineering, construction, environmental services, industrial services, finance, accounting, CPA, law firms. So white collar, blue collar, built environment, legal, finance, accounting. We've got team members that can do other stuff, but we like to kind of stay with the things that we know, any blue collar trade, residential, commercial, et cetera. So, but we're happy to help. If it's not us and you need help, we'll get you to the right people.
All right. Well, if you're listening, take him up on that. Seth is a brilliant, brilliant man. So, Seth, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And I look forward to continuing our relationship and watching it evolve into something great. And again, thank you so much. And give those dog's ears a big, nice hug from me. All right.
Will do. Thank you.